What's up, party people? It's your man, Stephen Bardo, coming at you with another edition of Bardo's Breakdown. I'm your host, Stephen Bardo. So glad that you guys could join me today. We got a really nice show. Got an interview with Marcus Fuller, who is the Minnesota Gophers men's basketball beat writer for the Minneapolis Star Tribune. Does a really good job, and I wanted to bring him on to discuss Minnesota's surprising season and the front runner, in my opinion, for the Big Ten Coach of the Year is Ben Johnson at Minnesota. So thank you all for joining. What's up, Carlos Newbern? Good to see you. So let's kick it off here. Let's start with Big Ten Power Rankings. Bardo's Breakdown, Big Ten Power Rankings. Let's get right into that. So I've got Michigan State, number one, coming off a huge road win that I was able to call. By the way, that got the second most views in Fox Sports 1 history for a college basketball game. I believe it was 890,000 people watched that game. Me and Kevin Kugler were on the ones and twos, so that was pretty dope. So yeah, Michigan State is number one in the power rankings. Number two this week is Ohio State, based on the fact that they didn't really have any games with the COVID pause, and they've won 2 in a row. And believe it or not, the longest winning streak in the Big Ten right now of Big Ten teams is 2 wins, Ohio State and Michigan. So Ohio State comes in at number 2. Number 3, Wisconsin. They took a tough loss at home to Michigan State. They were without Tyler Wall, who had a nasty ankle injury, kind of a tendon injury at Northwestern. So he was out for that game, and it really, really showed. Wisconsin struggled on both ends of the court. They come in at number 3. Illinois, similar situation, without their All-American center, Kofi Cockburn. Last game, they get smacked at Maryland. So they come in at number 4. Number 5 is Purdue. Tough loss at Indiana. Rob Finney comes up with a career day, and they rebound, Purdue does, to win 80-60 against Northwestern at home. They come in at number 5. Number 6 is Iowa. Tough 2-point loss at Rutgers with a really phantom call. Courtney Green was the official. He had a tough week. He had a phantom call on a Northwestern steal attempt by Chase Audige against Wisconsin that he called a foul, which clearly wasn't. Then he called a foul on Keegan Murray guarding Ron Harper Jr. when Iowa was at Rutgers. And it was with like a second left or 2 seconds left. And it was a really a kind of a questionable call that sent Ron Harper Jr. to the free throw line. He makes 2 free throws, and Iowa loses by 2 at Rutgers in a really hard-fought game. So Iowa comes in number 6. Surprising team right now, Michigan. Wolverines comes in at number 7. Michigan has double-digit wins versus Maryland at home, and they go on the road and smack the Hoosiers. I think that was yesterday on CBS. They come in at number 7. Indiana, number 8. They had a bad home loss against Michigan yesterday by double digits. But before that, they beat Purdue at home. It was an outstanding game for them. They had not beaten Purdue in 9 straight games. So they got the monkey off their back in their in-state rivalry game. So Indiana is at 8. Rutgers right now comes in at number 9. They were really hot, were the Rutgers Scarlet Knights before their loss on the road to a depleted Gophers team, a team that they should have beaten. They were down 3 starters. Eric Curry was out. Their leading scorer, I knew these names would get me one time. The leading Jamison Battle, he was out, and another starter was out, I think due to COVID. So they had 7 scholarship players did Minnesota, and they were able to beat Rutgers. So number 10 comes in at Minnesota's number 10. And the reason they are number 10, they had a slide there for a little bit. I think they'd lost 4 in a row in Big Ten conference play. But they come back and beat Rutgers on maybe the toughest and grittiest conference victory that we've seen all season. Maryland comes in at number 11. Big home victory over the depleted Illini without Kofi Cockburn. Maryland takes care of business with a double-digit victory over the Illini at home. Number 12, Penn State. They've got a big game this week at Indiana. Is really going to be big for their postseason hopes, for their NCAA or NIT tournament resume. They need a win there. Number 13 is Northwestern. They have lost 6 of their last 7 games, have had a lot of close games that they just could not close the door on. They really threw a scare into Wisconsin last week in their home loss to the Badgers. And then yesterday go on the road, or it was either Saturday or Sunday, go on the road and get smacked pretty good at Purdue, which is no shame because most people get smacked like that at Purdue, unless you're the Wisconsin Badgers. And then number 14, Nebraska, just can't get over the hump. I think they've dropped 8 in a row. They play some teams closely, but they just can't get over the hump. So they come in at number 14. And those are my Big Ten power rankings for this week. Remember, it's not where you're necessarily slated in the conference standings, but this has more to do with who I think is playing their best basketball right now. All right, so that was my Big Ten power rankings. I want to go now to this interview that I had with Marcus Fuller. He does a really good job of following the Minnesota Gophers men's basketball program. He's a beat writer for the Minneapolis Star Tribune. It's about 10 minutes. You IG folks, I'll try to turn the volume up as much as I can so that you can hear the interview. But listen in to my interview with Minnesota Gophers beat writer Marcus Fuller. Bardo coming at you with another edition of Bardo's Breakdown. I have a special guest on today. Marcus Fuller covers the Minnesota Gophers for the Minneapolis Star Tribune. Marcus, how you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great, Stephen. Yeah, I always love hearing from you. Even on my birthday, I appreciate it. I love this to talk basketball. I'm always willing to talk basketball.
Yeah, happy birthday, Marcus. How young are you today?
We don't like to share those things, do we? But I'm feeling pretty good. I'm not enough to go out and do pickup games on my birthday, but I'm feeling pretty good.
That's cool, man. Happy birthday. I hope you and your family treat you well on your special day. So thanks for taking the time, man. I appreciate it. All right. I think that you're covering one of the most exciting, probably the most surprising team in the Big Ten Conference this year, the Minnesota Gophers. They get a fabulous win against Rutgers, down 3 starters. Can you talk about what Minnesota's done this season and how surprising it is to everyone around the league?
Yeah, first of all, shout out to Ben Johnson, the way that his team performed shorthanded. You talk about how big the victory was. Obviously Rutgers, they had an incredible year last year. This year they had some struggles, but they turned things around. And going into the Minnesota game, they had won 5 out of 6 games since their COVID pause, and they were kind of right up there at the top of the league with 5 wins. So you take away the fact that Ben Johnson was playing with 7 scholarship players because of a COVID situation and injuries. That was a good win regardless. But the fact that going in, he was shorthanded, 7 scholarship players, like I said, you really kind of counted them out of that game, including their leading scorer, Jamison Battle. I mean, he's averaging 18 points a game. You take away another starter in E.J. Stevens, and then Eric Curry. You and I both love the kid. Came back from all these injuries, and he was playing his best basketball. So to play without 3 starters against Rutgers, a good team coming in, they counted him out. And Peyton Willis, what a performance, 32 points with 8 3-pointers, tying the school record. Like I said, you brought up Ben Johnson, but what the team was going through going into that game, the fact that we really didn't expect them to compete at all with 7 scholarship players, for them to pull out that win, it was an incredible story in itself. But like you said, this has been a surprise team from the beginning of the year. The way that people counted Ben Johnson out. I don't know if you had any Big Ten rankings going into the season, Stephen, but I'm pretty sure you probably had them at the bottom of the league. So.
No, they were at the bottom of the league. There's no doubt.
No doubt. Like a lot of us did. So I think that was an important win for them, not only because, like I said, they did it without they did it shorthanded. But the fact that, they started off the season so well, they were a surprise team in the Big Ten, but they had been on a 4-game losing streak in the Big Ten. People were starting to wonder, okay, can they turn this thing around? And we certainly didn't expect it to happen on Saturday versus Rutgers with the way they were missing some players.
I saw that Luke Lowy had a good game as well. I knew he could score more. He came in, I believe he was battling the flu. Were you surprised by Luke's performance in that victory over Rutgers?
I was. I want to say I'll put Peyton Willis in that category too. Both of those players were not shooting the ball well in Big Ten play. I want to say Peyton was coming in shooting about 23-25% around there from 3 in the Big Ten. Luke was shooting around that same spot in the Big Ten, and these guys are good shooters. So you're expecting it to come around for them. And like I said, Peyton had 32 points and 8 threes, and Luke, I believe he was averaging under double figures going into the game.
Yep.
And he had 19. And one of the key areas where I think that I'm glad you brought up Luke Lowy is, and why I wrote about him in my sidebar, is that if he did not play that game, they would have had to postpone the game. I mean, they barely made the minimum of 7 scholarship players available for that game. So if Luke said, you know what, coach, I tried, I don't know if I can do it. They pumped him with IVs. If he said I can't do it, then they would have to postpone the game. So, again, we're not dealing with a COVID. It's a non-COVID illness.
Sure.
If he had COVID, obviously he'd be out. But I think the fact that he, like you said, he battled through that, not feeling well, and he had 19. I mean, he was averaging about 7 or 8 points a game coming in Big Ten play. He had 19. They only won by a possession. So they needed Peyton Willis obviously to have the game of his life. They needed Luke to play just to have a chance to play the game and then have his best game of the season. And, you didn't mention it, but there's some other players that came up down the stretch in that game. Sean Sutherland, he had missed the previous game with a COVID situation, and he comes charged. Harper Jr. on the last, full play that Rutgers had set up. They had a timeout. I mean, Geo Baker was hot, but they went with Ron Harper, who's been pretty big for them in key situations this year.
And so what is it about Ben Johnson that he's able to rally these players to play maybe above even what they believe that how they can perform? What's Ben's magic? What's he done?
Well, first of all, he's a former player, Big Ten player. He's a former Gopher. He's a Minnesota native. So when he got the job, I think people understood that was the main reason why he got the job. He cares so much about the university, the program, the state. There's a passion there, and no one wants the Gophers to win more than Ben Johnson. And so some of these players might not be from Minnesota. Peyton Willis is not from Minnesota. Luke Lowy is not from Minnesota. He's from Wisconsin. But they understand the passion and how much he cares about the school and the university. And so they carry that with them. They have Minnesota on their chest. They really have that. Then you have guys from Minnesota like a Jamison Battle, Trayton Thompson, who was a freshman that came in and played really great. There's guys from Minnesota that also care about the state as much as they do and the culture. And so that kind of, like I said, fed into some of these players that hadn't played for the Gophers before. Peyton had, but Trayton Thompson, Jamison Battle. I mean, they had 10 newcomers coming in, so they had to understand, how much Ben cares about this program, how much he wants to build it, from the ground up. Obviously, with 10 newcomers, and so that carried over. First of all, first-year coach, you're not going to know what his style is right off the bat. I was kind of wondering myself. I spent a lot of time with him in the off season, and he was talking about a lot of things, but I was wondering, okay, how is this team going to play? But because he had experience with Dave Thorson, one of his assistants at De La Salle, they played. Ben Johnson played for Dave at De La Salle. Defense was always their model. Defense first. I mean, they were grinders is one of their models, grinding. And so defense was a big part of the culture for Ben, and in Big Ten play, they've struggled a little bit because the competition rose. But if you saw their 10-0 start, defense was a big part of that. Some of the games they just couldn't score, but they were able to hold teams down and they were able to win close games. So I think, the passion for the state of Minnesota was a big part of Ben Johnson's philosophy and culture. Defense first really helped them win a lot of games early in the season when they were surprising teams. They beat Michigan at Michigan. They beat Mississippi State at Mississippi State. They won at Pittsburgh. I mean, these were high major opponents on the road.
Yep.
And this is a team that had not won these games before. I think in years past, they had an offensive first mentality under Richard Pitino, especially with guys like Marcus Carr. Daniel Tour had an incredible year, but they were always, more of offensive minded. And I think, when you rely on your defense, sometimes you just have some ugly games where you're not able to shoot the ball well and you can still win. And that Rutgers game is a perfect example. I mean, Rutgers is one of those teams that, they don't, I think the Iowa game, they scored, under
49 or something like that.
Points. Yeah, and they still won, and I think that's the type of mentality that Ben's team has is, even if we're struggling shooting, we still find a way to win.
Marcus, if people want to follow you, where can they find you?
Marcus_R_Fuller on Twitter. And I also on Instagram. I appreciate it. And Minneapolis Star Tribune, they do a great job in all sports. The Vikings are just trying to figure out their head coaching situation and general manager situation. So that's getting all the headlines right now. But that Gopher win sure made people feel pretty good here in Twin Cities. And I appreciate you following me online. And Stephen, I love your show. And I've always followed you and always, see you doing a great job in the Big Ten. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Marcus. I appreciate it. That's Marcus Fuller. So that was Marcus Fuller with the Minneapolis Star Tribune, who's a Gophers beat writer, giving us some insight about the Minnesota Gophers and the job that Ben Johnson, head coach at Minnesota, is doing. He is the front runner for Big Ten Coach of the Year. I'll reiterate that their last victory at home versus Rutgers, you have to have 7 players in order to play these Big Ten games. They had 7 players, but Luke Lowy was really struggling with the flu. They had to give him they gave him fluids just to get his electrolytes up, and he comes out and has a career game. So Ben Johnson is working wonders in Minneapolis, where a lot of people thought that they would be the last team in Big Ten this year, and got a huge victory with a depleted roster. So big ups to the Minnesota Gophers, and also big ups to Ben Johnson, head coach, first year head coach at the University of Minnesota. Let's move forward here and look at the games to watch this week. We got some good ones. What's up, Raphael Davis, Tara Lee Miller, Terry Campbell, Byron Irvin, Mizzou great. What's good, Byron? Good to see you. Mr. Christopher A. Nolan, good to see you. Thanks for joining. Games of the week to watch. Tomorrow, this is a big one, ladies and gentlemen. Michigan State at Illinois on ESPN. We don't know the status of Kofi Cockburn. He missed last game with a concussion. We'll have to see if he's going to play, because that is going to loom huge, because Illinois looked like a average team without Kofi Cockburn on the road at Maryland in a double-digit loss. The next game, that will be on, it looks like Thursday, Purdue at Iowa, FS1. Purdue trying to right the ship after their week loss at Indiana. They did win their last game at home against Northwestern, but this is a very good Iowa team that pushed Purdue at home in the first grouping of Big Ten games early in December. I was on the call for that one. Iowa played very, very well, came from behind to throw a scare at Purdue. That would be one to watch. The surprising Michigan Wolverines. Something clicked with the Wolverines in their loss at Illinois. They seem to be playing a lot better. They've got 2 straight victories. They pounded Maryland at home by double digits and went on the road, really handled the Hoosiers in a tough environment. So the Wolverines go to Michigan State. So 2 of the hottest teams in the Big Ten Conference will link up. That will be Saturday. Yes, Saturday, Michigan at Michigan State on CBS. Also Saturday, Illinois at Northwestern. I'll be on the call on Big Ten Network. I think that will be me and Chris Vosters on the call. That's going to be an interesting one because Northwestern always plays Illinois very tough at Welsh Ryan Arena. So that's going to be interesting. And then the other one on Sunday, very good game, Ohio State at Purdue. That one will also be on CBS. So those are the games to watch coming up this week in the Big Ten. As you guys can tell, that the longest win streaks in the conference are 2 victories. That's it. And that's Michigan. And there's another one. It's Michigan and maybe Penn State. But the longest win streak in conference play right now is 2 games. And that belongs to the Michigan Wolverines. Zoomer Sports, what's up? Ben Johnson also got a nice recruiting class coming in with 3 stars, including Farrell Payne. Thank you, Andrew, for sharing that. Appreciate you, my man. So let me go to the Big Ten team of the week. My Big Ten team of the week is the Michigan Wolverines. I just referenced them. They got a double-digit win at home versus Maryland. They go on the road and spank the Hoosiers. That game was not even in question. And here's what I like about what I'm seeing from Michigan. Hunter Dickinson was out against Illinois, but Jace Howard came in off the bench and played like his hair was on fire. Frankie Collins, I think, is the key. They weren't playing Frankie Collins early, but now he's starting to play. I think yesterday was his 20th birthday, and he played like it at Indiana. He's that dynamic guard that can get downhill, that's athletic, that can create some different opportunities for his teammates. Hunter Dickinson is back in the lineup. He looked really good against Indiana, and they seem to have found their footing, so to speak, have the Wolverines, and they're starting to play like the team that we thought they could be in the preseason. They had really struggled there. Devontae Jones, I think a lot of us, and me included, thought that he could come in and do the same thing that Mike Smith, the transfer point guard, fifth-year senior, came in and did last year for Michigan. But the thing is, we didn't account for Shawnee Brown, Isaiah Livers, and Wagner. Those are 3 pros. Those guys are playing in the NBA right now. They're not there any longer, and I didn't account for those losses in the roster that would make it difficult for them to kind of step in and be the team that we thought they'd be. But they're starting to round into shape. So Michigan is my team of the week right now. The Big Ten team that's struggling, in my opinion, the most right now are the Fighting Illini. They are really having some issues because Corbello against Maryland played 14 minutes, only 4 points. It looks like, he was playing all on emotion against that double overtime loss against Purdue, where he was spectacular off the bench with 20 points. And how do the Illini find their identity with Corbello coming back? Because it seems as though Trent Frazier has not played as well, nor has DeMonte Williams played as well since Corbello's return. So a lot of moving parts on the Illini roster right now. Corbello back in the mix. Kofi Coburn's status uncertain for their huge home matchup against Michigan State. So Illinois has to find their footing. They're really struggling. It's going to be interesting to see what Brad Underwood does against Michigan State, because they got to right the ship quickly with 2 straight losses in conference play. They were at the top. They're right underneath now. I believe they're a game and a half back of first place Michigan State. And if they can get this victory, they can keep pace with Wisconsin with 3. I think Wisconsin has 3 conference losses as well, maybe 2. But Illinois trying to keep pace with Wisconsin, Michigan State, Ohio State, and Purdue at the top. So that'll be interesting to see. Caleb Houston did play well. Byron Irvin mentioning Caleb Houston played well at Indiana. Yes, he did. Young man has a ton of upside, but just having to find his way, but doing a good job. Let's see. I want to go. Carlos Newburn says he agrees. They did spank the Hoosiers. J.G. Green B, thanks for joining. Let me go into story time, and then I'll come back and answer some of these questions. Story time with Steven. So my executive producer, Tony Gill, had a great idea with what happened with Grayson Allen over the weekend. Hard foul on Alex Caruso going to the hole. Was it dirty? Was it not dirty? What do you guys think? So it reminds me of a time that I'll go back to my senior year. It was my last collegiate game at Illinois. First round matchup. We're in Austin, Texas. We're playing Dayton in the first round. Tara Lee Miller says dirty. We were playing Dayton in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Miguel Knight, they had a really good team. And Kevin Greavy's brother, and I can't remember his first name, but Greavy goes up, and he goes up on the left-hand side. I'm coming to block it. And he fakes me out. He acts like he's coming on the left side. He tucks the ball and is going in for a reverse layup on the right side. I'm coming for the block, and he fakes me out, and I don't want to let him score. So I hit his arms really hard. He loses his balance and falls really, really awkwardly. And I go to check on him to make sure he's okay. And his coach comes out, and he's cursing at me. And another one of the guy's teammates jumps in my face. And at that time, it was a intentional foul. That's what they called it. It was an intentional foul. And the CBS announcers kind of got on, they're like, oh, that was a dirty foul by Bardo. And, like I said, I can't remember the Dayton head coach at the time, but he came out and cursed at me. And I asked him to go in the locker room after the game. We'll see what he does. Because that's just how I was as a player. I played on the edge. And so it was, I didn't get any retribution from the Dayton players because I think they saw when I checked on them, they knew that I wasn't trying to hurt the young man. And so I didn't get a hard foul the rest of the game or whatnot. But back in the day, if there was a foul like Grayson Allen put on Alex Caruso, Lowell Hamilton, Kenny Battle, or Nick Anderson, or me, because I took the role of an enforcer. One of us would say something and say, hey, let him come baseline or let him make a move and get past you, and we'll take care of the rest. And you don't see that in basketball anymore, but that was the code when I played. So I'm not going to say whether it was a dirty foul or not by Grayson Allen, but what I will say is that he would have had retribution in that game. The players wouldn't wait for the league to make a ruling. It would have been handled that game. So if we thought that was a dirty foul, there would have been something that would have been done to him. Now, is it right? Is it wrong? I'm not here to say whether it's right or wrong. That was the way the game was played, and that's the way that retribution was handed out back in the day. So I hope you guys got a little bit from that. Joe Stovall, it was dirty based on today's standards, just a hard foul back in the day. Should the suspension equal the number of days Caruso was out? That is a great question, Joe Stovall, who is a tribe member. If you want to be a part of the tribe, text me 312-847-2739. Joe Stovall is also in Bardo's Breakdown group, which is another way that you can go. So you can join the tribe by texting 312-847-2739. It's the insiders group to Bardo's Breakdown, or you can go to Bardo's Breakdown group, ask to join. There's 3 quick questions and you're in. But Joe makes a great point. So if Alex Caruso is going to be out 6 to 8 weeks, should Grayson Allen's suspension be that long? That would be fair. Now, I think a lot of times that leagues look at that and say, oh, that's too harsh. It's too long. It wasn't intentional. And so Adam Silver and they have to figure that out. But if you get that type of situation moving forward, would that curtail some of these instances? Absolutely. Do we see a lot of instances in college basketball and the NBA of these type of fouls? No, we don't. De'Aaron Fox, ironically, had a foul where what was the guy? It was from Cleveland. No, Houston Rockets player. And I can't remember his first name, but Fox went in to try to keep him from scoring. The young man fell awkwardly, and De'Aaron Fox tried to hold him up and immediately went over and checked on him to see that if he was okay. He got a 1-game suspension. And so I think the NBA is trying to keep the rulings clear across the board. So De'Aaron Fox got a 1-game suspension. Grayson Allen gets a 1-game suspension. But Joe Stovall brings up a good point. Byron Irvin says, Grayson Allen is the guard version of Bill Lane Beer. He used to do that, foul like that, and have a smile on his face. That's interesting. I hadn't heard that comparison, but that's an interesting comparison. So I'm not here to say whether borderline, but history doesn't fare well with him, says Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan, that's a good point, because what's happening is we're all thinking about what he did in college and some of the things that have happened. I don't know that Grayson has had an incident since he's been in the NBA. I don't think he has. So it'll be interesting to see, moving forward, what the league does if there's another situation that Grayson is involved in. And March 4th is when the Bulls and the Bucks play again. So I anticipate there may be some fireworks in that game. Let me go through here really quickly. Tony, you want to throw some questions up that look interesting? Curtis Dietz, why don't teams press? I'm not saying press the whole game, but use it 2 to 4 minutes at a time. I just hate seeing coaches play man-to-man the whole game when it isn't working. Curtis, that's a good question. You can't just press, though, if you don't practice it. If you don't have it as part of your game, it's not something that teams can just do automatically, because you're going to get killed in it. You have to know what you have to know what you're doing. You have to have your principles set. You have to have your rotation set to be able to press effectively at the college level, because these teams are too good. If you haven't practiced something like that and it's not in your defensive arsenal, it's not something that college coaches are going to go into. You see another one, Tony, at all? Worth talking here. Chuck Ramey says definitely that was a dirty. That foul was dirty. Illini need to get their 3-point shot back. Plummer has lost his touch, says Gary Haynes. He'll get it back. Brian K. Hurd, thanks for joining on. Thoughts about Io, as Daniel Cavazzo. Io is having an outstanding year. He's proven to the rest of the NBA that he was drafted too low, but the creator or God had better plans that didn't quite become quite apparent until now. He's in the perfect situation for his playing ability. He's back home. He's got the love of the Illini behind him as well. So it's a love affair with Io DeSumo. And it gave him extra motivation, not that he needed it, but it gave him extra motivation to play the way that he's played. DeMar DeRozan loves him, has taken him under his wing. So it all worked out beautifully. The fact that Io DeSumo got drafted later than all of us predicted and thought he should be, but he's having a last laugh, as are the Chicago Bulls. So thank you all for joining Bardo's Breakdown. Thank you to Marcus Fuller for coming on, the Minneapolis Star Tribune, Minnesota Gophers beat writer, for that interview within. If you guys didn't see the interview, go back and check the repost of Bardo's Breakdown. Thank you guys for joining once again. Have a great rest of your week. I'll be coming back every now and then with insider information on Bardo's Breakdown group if you want to join. Have a great rest of your week. Love you guys. Talk to you later. Peace, y'all.